Good morning. A very heartfelt welcome on behalf of the David Lynch Foundation and its newest division, Operation Warrior Wellness. And a very special welcome to our veterans and military leaders, to our scientists and medical researchers and guests and members of the press, both here in Los Angeles and connected via webcast all over the world today. In a little over 4 years, the David Lynch Foundation has brought the stress-reducing, health-promoting, brain-developing technique of Transcendental Meditation to close to 500,000 at-risk students in hundreds of schools in the United States and all over the world, and have started serving other at-risk populations, including Native Americans who are at very high risk of diabetes and heart disease, drug abuse, depression, and suicide, the homeless, as well as many homeless veterans, and many other groups throughout the world, including here on the streets of Los Angeles, children victimized by prostitution. Transcendental Meditation is the most widely researched and widely practiced technique for the reduction of stress and the promotion of health and the development of the brain of any technique. It's not a philosophy. It's not a religion or lifestyle. It's a very effortless mental technique practiced for a few minutes twice a day by millions of people all over the world. It was just a little over a year ago that we were hearing the question frequently, why not offer this to active service, active duty military personnel, or why not to veterans? Why not to those who are at greatest risk and under the greatest stress in service to all of us? David Lynch and the Foundation embraced this immediately, and today we are teaching at military bases and military colleges, working with important veterans organizations, and are engaged in broad research on warrior health and warrior resilience. Today we will be launching formally Operation Warrior Wellness and our Resilient Warrior program in Los Angeles in a very big way. This morning we're going to hear a few brief statements from veterans and military leaders, a few key scientists, followed by a special announcement and formal launch of this program by David Lynch, followed by questions from the press and a photo op involving a group meditation here with veterans. And to begin, I'm very, very honored this morning to introduce Jerry Yellin, our co-chair of Operation Warrior Wellness, an 87-year-old decorated former P-51 pilot from World War II. He landed on Iwo Jima on March 7th of 1945, strafed Japanese positions for the Marines, and flew 19 VLR missions over Japan. He and his wife of 62 years, Yellin, have 4 sons and 6 grandchildren, 3 of whom live in the United States and 3 live in Japan. Jerry Yellin.
Thank you very much. I was just one of 16 million veterans of World War II. We represented 10% of our nation. My war lasted 40 months and covered most of the world. The Afghanistan War began in October 2001, the Iraq War in March of 2003. On this day in 2011, we have been at war in 2 small countries cumulatively for 18 years, 216 months. The financial toll on our country is immeasurable. The physical and mental toll on our troops is and has been devastating, a national disaster. Hundreds of thousands of active duty personnel, discharged veterans and their families suffer from post-traumatic, combat-induced stress, PTS. They are not getting the help that they need. We are here today with men and women who served our country in every war that we have fought since 1941. Among us are representatives of organizations dedicated to helping veterans overcome the scars of war, both physical and mental. and mental that allows them to find their way back into civilian life. I am proud, along with Ed Shlomit, to represent Operation Warrior Wellness. We are working diligently with Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans Association, the Wounded Warrior Project, Women Veterans Association of America, and other organizations within the military to bring a solution to all veterans in need. We will expand on that information about our progress later today. All of us, all of our organizations, need the help of all of you to ensure the health and well-being of the 1% of the nation who have been protecting us these past years. We cannot wait. We need your help now. Thank you very much.
In preparation for our next speaker, renowned psychiatrist and medical researcher Dr. Norman Rosenthal, I'd like to play a very short tape featuring Iraq veteran David George and his mother, Julia George. Both David and Julia are here with us today. We'll have an opportunity to hear from David just a little bit later. But to introduce David George, he served 3 years in the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division. As a member of their 3rd Brigade, Rakasans, he deployed to meet his unit in Baghdad during the invasion of Iraq a month after he finished his basic training, and he fought with that unit until they returned home in 2004. This short video we're about to see captures, I think, very graphically the impact of post-traumatic stress, which afflicts an extraordinarily high percentage of our servicemen and women, especially upon their return from duty. So let's take a look at that, please.
My name is Julia Elena George. I am the mother of David Maurice George. When he finished high school, he decided to go to the Army for one major reason. I will never forget that. He was very, very upset and heartbroken when the Twin Towers collapsed. He says, I'm going to go.
The war started while I was in basic, so when I got out of basic, they gave us this speech that, you know, you kind of hear in the movies where it's like, look to your left, look to your right. These guys are not going to be alive.
We spoke many times over the phone while he was in Iraq, and he was telling me what he was going through.
The big thing for me was a car bomb had hit our compound and gotten through the gate, and luckily one of the guards shot the car till they detonated, till the people inside detonated. There were 2 enemy combatants, I would say. Hit the trigger right, I guess, as they were dying, and blew the car up, and subsequently like 50 people were injured in the attack.
It's so horrible, these explosions and killing, and seeing his friends, arms here, heads there, right in front of you, your good friends. Oh, when he come back. That's the part that sometimes I don't like to talk, because it's so painful. He was out of his mind for the effects of the war. He was disrespectful, he was cursing me.
I just gravitated towards alcohol. I bought whiskey, I bought Jack Daniels. And that's how that started, because as soon as I had a couple swigs, I was like, all right, well, that takes care of that. And so every time afterwards, when it would creep up, you go drink.
And not obeying the law, not obeying nothing, absolutely nothing. He had many car accidents because he was drinking. He said, I don't care, Mom, I don't care. If I die tomorrow and I crash a car. And he told me, one of my friends just died. Don't you understand? I am supposed to be there. If I would be there, he will not be dead. And I'm here. What can I do? Tell me, what can I do being here? So I was afraid many times he will kill himself. Many. That one day when I come from work or when I go downstairs, when I wake up in the morning, he will be dead. I lived like that for so many years. DM. He changed his way of thinking. He started appreciating his life. And he's another person. He's normal. He's thinking about the future, thinking about respecting, more than anything, respecting himself, loving himself. The first class that he went to, he says, every day, every time that I meditate is better, and I feel better and better and better. Thanks to the TM meditation. He's not drinking, he is happy. It's beautiful, it's incredible.
The first time I meditated, I experienced this relief from the constant anxiety attack my life had become. I didn't even realize I was that stressed out, but after my first 20 minutes, when I came out of it, I realized, I was like, that was a break. Now, being someone who's meditated for a year and 2 months, I'm so happy. I'll never stop. You know, it has this compounding effect of just getting better and better, and this great feeling lasts longer and longer the more I meditate. You know, why stop?
That is the boy that I raised. TM saved his life.
David and Julia, thank you. Firstly, for your patriotic service, but also to both of you for sharing what has been, till recently, a fairly much neglected, devastating side effect of the war on so many millions of people. And thanks for helping to bring that out. Dr. Norman Rosenthal is a 20-year senior researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health, who currently serves as clinical professor of psychiatry at Georgetown University Medical School. Dr. Rosenthal is internationally known for his medical expertise on post-traumatic stress disorder and world-renowned for his pioneering work on seasonal affective disorder, SAD, and for developing light therapy treatments for this disorder. He's the author of over 200 scholarly articles and 5 books for the general public, including the most recent book discussing breakthrough research on the healing and transformative effect of Transcendental Meditation. Dr. Norman Rosenthal.
Well, thank you. I must say I have seen the videotape of David, George, and Julia many times, but it never fails to move me. And no wonder. A young person, a courageous young person, goes abroad to serve his country, is bombarded and shaken by the horrors of war, and comes back home a changed person. By day, he is tormented by intolerable memories and flashbacks. By night, his sleep is disrupted by nightmares that leave him drenched, as though he is back in the battlefield again. Sometimes he turns to alcohol, to drugs, to risky behaviors just to medicate himself and silence the alarm bells in his brain and his body that keep ringing, even though the danger is past. The danger is now coming from within, from the reverberating circuits, the fight or flight response system that is on overdrive, the alarm bells that don't stop ringing, even though the alarm has ceased to be of signal value. That is what we need to do. We need to silence, we need to soothe, we need to soften this fight or flight response system, and that is our task, and that is our mission. Now, how common is PTSD? As people know, all too common, but a recent report from the National Center for PTSD, though, says that though estimates vary, 10% is about a fair estimate, which would mean 200,000 people, 200,000 souls in this country are having the same kind of ordeal that we have just seen described by David George. And for each of these people, there's a family, just like Julia, sitting by, helplessly watching. So clearly, what we have here is both a huge medical problem and a huge human tragedy. David George was one of 5 people whom we studied in our organization in a pilot study of TM for PTSD. And awful as his story was and is, it is no exception. The other young people had stories that in their own way were just as harrowing and heart-wrenching as David's. And yet, 4 out of 5 people had the same level of transformation that we have seen described in this video. Let me have the first slide, if I may. These are the average results on 5 veterans. And if you look at that blue line, that is the CAPS score. That is the gold standard for measuring PTSD symptoms. And you'll see in 2 months, it's reduced by about 50%, which is very significant, both statistically and clinically. Next slide, please. This slide shows another study done in Vietnam veterans by researchers Brooks and Scarano almost 30 years ago. And as you see, 10 veterans were given TM training and 12 controls received the conventional psychotherapy of the time. After 3 months, 7 of the 10 TMers requested no further therapy, whereas the controls showed little improvement. Now, flash forward to the present day, where there is a very exciting study being conducted on Congolese refugees in Uganda. We have Dr. Reese here in the audience, somewhere, over here. He's one of the architects of the study, along with Fred Travis. And it's a remarkable study, given that these people have been exposed to unspeakable atrocities in their homeland of the Congo and are now displaced and reeling with symptoms of PTSD. The study is ongoing, but as of the 1-month mark, 25 people who've received TM have experienced substantial benefits, as opposed to 25 controls who have shown little improvement. Now, besides the results of these studies, we have all collectively seen hundreds of people with PTSD, combat-related, non-combat-related, tremendously helped by TM. It's really impressive if you see it with your own eyes, as you've done on the video. Conventional treatments, of course, have some benefits, psychotherapy and medications, but they fall woefully short of the mark. And clearly a new approach is needed. I would respectfully suggest that TM offers just such a new approach, and in fact has the potential to be a game changer, as it was with David. At this point, I would like to say that I'm so delighted to be here to support my friend David Lynch and his wonderful foundation and this wonderful new initiative that is going to help so very many people. I'm also honored to be standing alongside the heroic veterans who have worked tirelessly in support of their wounded colleagues and comrades. It occurs to me that as a researcher, I look at the data and I say, wouldn't it be great to have more studies, larger numbers, more controls? Researchers always say that, by the way. But as a clinician, I say, we just can't afford to wait for the results of those studies to come in. The situation is too dire. The potential and promise of this technique is too great. So what I say is that we really need to act immediately, without delay, to bring this simple but amazingly powerful technique to these people who are suffering so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norman. Our next speaker is Dr. Serena Grosswald. She is a George Washington University-trained cognitive learning specialist and research investigator at the NIH-funded Center for Natural Medicine and Prevention. She's co-author of a series of trials studying the effects of the TM technique on PTS and resilience among military personnel and veterans. Dr. Serena Grosswald.
Thank you. It's really an honor to participate in this new initiative within Operation Warrior Wellness to recognize and support the women who have served and are serving in our military today. Military women have unique needs that have been under-acknowledged, and in most cases, they've been underserved. Like their male peers, these women serve dedicated and courageous in their military service. But they have much greater challenges both in their service and when they return home. There's no question that we have an enormous problem in trying to help those who have served to return to their normal lives. But for military women, those challenges are even greater. They would say roughly 25 to 40% of those who are returning from this current war are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as the many who have served in previous wars, often suffering silently. But in the general population for women, the prevalence of PTSD is twice that of men. So we can assume that among the military women, the prevalence of PTSD, the percentage of women suffering from post-traumatic stress, is significant. In addition, many military women suffer from another type of trauma, MST, or military sexual trauma, which is only just now beginning to come to light. For these women, not only do they have a greater risk of post-traumatic stress disorder, but they're also at greater risk for many other mental health disorders. Then their transition home. The transition home is difficult for both men and women who have served. But again, for women, the challenges are greater as they try to return to their roles as mothers and caretakers when they've spent a good part of the last several years sublimating those feminine nourishing qualities. As they try to reintegrate and return to their roles, they have very difficult. The divorce rate among women is 3 times that among the military women than that of their peers of men. And a staggering 4 times as many military women are homeless than their non-veteran women. Transcendental meditation is a way for these women to reclaim their lives. It's personal, it's private, and it's a resource to help them reduce the stress of the sometimes devastating effects of the trauma that they've experienced in their military service. It can help them restore their nurturing, feminine qualities that they've had to often sublimate for so long, and help them in their transition as they return back to their family and friends. In this challenge of providing for the health and well-being of those who have served our country, Operation Warrior Wellness pledges to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serena. Tara Jones-Wise is the executive director of the newly formed Women Veterans Association of America, an organization that provides innovative employment services, one-to-one counseling, and advocacy for increased benefits for women veterans. The descendant of a long line of military active duty members, Tara is the first woman in her family to serve in the U.S. military. She is a 90% service-connected disabled veteran in the Gulf War era and an MBA graduate under the Vocational Rehabilitation Program. Tara. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tara Jones-Wise. I am a service-connected Gulf War era Navy veteran. After my active duty service, as I began my transition stage, I didn't psychologically see myself in society. Me, a military servicewoman, underrepresented in political offices and as leaders with Fortune 500 businesses. Me, a mother with a very young child, fighting to change barriers that women have fought for long before me. Me, with a variety of health challenges like undiagnosed military sexual trauma, anxiety disorder, over-medication, under-medication, and body aches as a result of performing like a machine. Me, struggling to provide housing and stability for my family. My challenge was women veterans matter too. I always question why the civilian community isn't really fighting for me the way I did for them. Today is so very important for me because I am still here. I researched all I could about Transcendental Meditation. I reached out to them and they immediately responded to me. A year ago this month, I was suicidal. I felt so low that I wanted to just not be here. Today, I can say I am a meditator. It's that simple. Transcendental meditation saved my life. It calmed my mind, helped to restore my nurturing nature, restored my femininity, and has helped me to become a better thinker. Once I learned I didn't have to depend on anyone else, it makes me feel good inside mentally and physically. Now I can picture my future of being a grandmother, a successful businesswoman, and a strong advocate for my fellow sisters. David Lynch Foundation found me. Well, I guess we found each other. Today I feel like I finally matter for the first time in a long time, thanks to my TM trainers. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara, for your service and for that very moving presentation. At this point, we have a short video message from Clint Eastwood, who is a very strong supporter of our Operation Warrior Wellness Initiative, and we'll be listening to that for about a minute or two while we shuffle things around on stage a little bit.
I'm a great supporter of Transcendental Meditation. I've been using it for almost 40 years now. And I think it is a great tool for anyone to have and to be able to utilize as a tool for stress. And stress, of course, comes with almost every business, but especially considering the stress that our men and women of the armed forces would go through, the anxieties of going either in or coming from combat, and stress syndromes of various types. I think it's a great tool. I think there's enough studies out there that show that Transcendental Meditation, or TM as we all call it, is something that can benefit everybody. And I congratulate you and everyone there tonight. And again, apologize for not being there. I want to pay tribute to Captain Yellin and Colonel Brian Reese and Ed Shlomit, Master Sergeant, and everyone there who is supporting this organization. I think you'll find it's a great system to use and life in general. Otherwise, why would I have been doing it all these years? Almost half of my life, I've just calculated. So have a good evening. I'm sorry I'm not there. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Clint. So now at this point, we're going to take a moment to formally launch our Operation Warrior Wellness Initiative in Los Angeles. and to bring this very, very effective and much needed brain-based approach to treating post-traumatic stress to veterans everywhere. And for this, I'd like to ask our founder and chairman of the board, David Lynch, to come and make a special presentation. David Lynch, of course, is a revered filmmaker, writer, producer, and his very creative, iconic works include films like Eraserhead, Elephant Man, Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, Straight Story, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire, and so on and so forth. David is also an amazing human being. He's not only incredibly brilliant and creative, but deeply wise and extremely compassionate. David.
Good morning. It is a great honor for me to present this check on behalf of the hard-working, great team of DLF, David Lynch Foundation, and on behalf of the generous donors who gave this money. This check for $1 million to start the help for the great veterans of America. Thank you very much.
There have been 2 times in my life where the purity of purpose of what I was doing overruled everything in my life. One, when I was 17 years old and war broke out on December 7th, 1941, and I enlisted in the Air Corps at the age of 18. And the second time that the purity of purpose overrides everything that I have ever done is when we started Operation Warrior Wellness to help our veterans. I have done 3 endeavors where I was in the zone, where life flowed perfectly and easily. 1 was as a P-51 pilot, 2 was as a scratch golfer for 35 years, and 3, when I write sometimes for 2 hours or 3 hours, and I look at what I've written and wonder where it came from. So it isn't what I do that is important. It isn't what you think when you do TM. TM is a technique that puts you into the zone of life 20 minutes a day, twice a day, and life flows effortlessly, just like an athletic event. So I gratefully acknowledge this gift from David Lynch and from the people in the audience, and thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David and Bobby and the whole team of the David Lynch Foundation for this most generous donation. Except that this being LA, I asked for this in cash. But really, this is, as one man once said, one small step for man, one giant leap for our veterans. God bless. Semper Fi.
Well, on behalf of the veterans of OIF, OEF, I'd like to thank you very much and accept this donation. It reflects a marvelous commitment to address the needs of our veterans, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Just want to say the power of nature, the power of TM has brought us all here today on a journey of enlightenment. So I just wish everybody nothing but success and love. The revolution of love is here through TM.
On behalf of the Wounded Warrior Project, I'd like to thank you for your generosity. Our goal that we have with the Wounded Warrior Project is to make this generation the most well-adjusted generation of wounded warriors in our nation's history. And I look forward to see what the changes we can make in our warriors' lives. Thank you very much, sir.
Wow, this is so amazing. We really do need the support. Women veterans really do matter. Thank you.
The support's very important, and to see that it's actually coming through and reaching veterans like us, like me, Dr. Rosenthal helped me learn, it's really important. So my mom was there to support me. She's really got me through it, and support is key, as well as TM. You gotta do the TM too. But the support, thank you for the support. And there you go.
I have this. My generation didn't have this opportunity. This one does. And the David Lynch Foundation is making it happen. This is great, just great.
So many lives have already been transformed through the power of TM for veterans, and I only hope that many more will be affected by this donation. Thank you.
We have an opportunity for questions from the press. Adam has been watching the monitor. The questions that have come in also from press who are connected. For any of our veterans or any of our speakers thus far, we should probably have a chair up here for Norman and others, especially if questions come up. So let's take a minute, and then what we'll do is we'll take some questions, we'll break for a couple of minutes for a stretch, and then we're going to continue with some presentations which are also quite remarkable from some of the veterans and some of the scientific findings for those who can stay afterwards for another 30 minutes or so. All right, any questions from any of our guests and members of the press today?
Hi, this is for the servicemen particularly. Military who come back with post-traumatic stress, who either continuing in the military or veterans, are reluctant often to go seek treatment. And so I wanted to know, what was it about Transcendental Meditation, the technique, that encourages them to actually go get treatment, and what were their effects compared to the other treatments that they were receiving prior to learning TM?
We have made an outreach to the federal government. We speak to organizations and companies. I spent 8 days in Minnesota not too long ago, spoke to the Minnesota National Guard, the Wisconsin National Guard. We've taught 30 people to meditate in the military, and it expands that way. I'm working with the Iowa National Guard. I live in Iowa. And they're all coming up with suggestions to those who have PTS to learn Transcendental Meditation. I'm speaking with several scientists and people at Camp Pendleton on Monday and Tuesday of this week. The Marines are getting involved. I'll be speaking to a psychiatrist who has 30 people under him at the submarine base on Rosecrans Avenue in San Diego on Wednesday. And we're just doing an outreach. We need the press. We need TV. We need the American public to get involved, to finance this. John talked about $10 million. I'm talking about $300 million. If we could get 1 million people in the United States who are affected, just 1 million people, family members, 1 hour's pay a month for 12 months, we would raise $300 million and have enough in our kitty. This is an app. Transcendental Meditation is just another app that we can add to our repertoire. And that app costs $1,500. And we want to offer it to the veterans and their families for nothing. And we have possibly 1,200,000 people who need Transcendental Meditation. So the outreach is to the companies. Through the IAVA, Bristol Myers Squibb has put an initiative out for their employees that they can donate part of their pay for mental health of veterans. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow night at the gala, at our event.
I think any veteran suffering would want to do what, man or woman, would want to do what Clint Eastwood tells them is good.
You know, this is Operation Warrior Wellness, and the emphasis has been on TM. And there are barriers to traditional care and frustrations with traditional care. But let me just say, as a clinician, to any wounded warriors who are listening out there, if you're suffering from post-traumatic stress, seek care. Okay, seek care. See your clinician, see your psychiatrist, go to the VA. We're not, these options are not mutually exclusive. So I don't want that to be lost. Seek care. Having said that, there are barriers to care. As you mentioned, many veterans don't want to seek care because there is a stigma associated with it. And some of the current treatments are incompletely effective, and many of them involve reliving the experience, which was so traumatic and difficult the first time. So there are barriers and problems, but if you're having a problem, seek care.
Good morning. For all the Marines in the room and abroad, Ura and Semper Fi. For those veterans in the room, as well as those who are going to want to know about these programs and services, thank you. Thank you for those who continue to serve, and thank you for those who have returned to come back and continue the representation. My name is Armando Tejas. I'm an executive board member of the California Democratic Party Veterans Caucus. And what one of my concerns is, if not my interest more so for this program and for the success of this program, is how it's going to target specifically the veterans, if not the returning military who are otherwise discharged with an other than honorable discharge, who are otherwise not eligible for GI benefits and or for VA benefits. How can this program still focus on that particular group of military veterans?
The power of TM, the power of love. Being a veteran means you came from someplace. You have family that are suffering from someplace. We are all on a journey. So what I'm doing, along with everybody else, we are showing love. It doesn't matter who you are or what your discharge is. There are monies out there available and people that show love, and we accept everybody, and we will continue accepting no matter who you are. And through TM, we show love for yourself and for everybody else. We are one conscious, the revolution of love.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let me quickly hit a couple of questions that have come in from outside of this room. One, how do you learn TM? It's a very practical question. You can talk to the David Lynch Foundation, of course. Anybody who is here, you can go to davidlynchfoundation.org, tm.org also. And there are grants for people who need support to learn, especially for the veterans who need support, and that's one of the tremendous achievements of this launch of Operation Warrior Wellness, to be sure there is enough support for all veterans who want and need to learn to meditate. It's very easy. It's taught over a 4-day process of about an hour and a half per day, and then you're a pretty self-sufficient meditator at that point. But it is helpful to go back and have your meditation checked or fine-tuned from time to time. And that's a program that is available free throughout one's lifetime. And a second one is, how does TM compare to other meditations? A very good question. I might ask you to refer to that, but I'll say one thing based on the research. It's a question of simplicity and effectiveness. The simplicity of the technique makes it easily available to anyone, including children from the age of 10, have no trouble mastering it in our public school systems here in LA and San Francisco and everywhere. So it's easy, it's self-reinforcing because it's so enjoyable to practice. You don't have to take, it's not like diet or exercise. It takes no discipline whatsoever. And the other thing is effectiveness. It's just the level of rest gained, the level of deep relaxation, physiological rest gained is proportional to the degree of healing, transformation, restoration of balance that occurs. And the rest gained during this technique called Transcendental Meditation, which is a very, very deep, deep experience of the mind going profoundly within, is a much deeper state of rest, even than sleep, much deeper than deep sleep, and certainly in comparison to what is conventionally called relaxation or meditation. So it's the depth of rest which has a great bearing on the immediate effectiveness of the practice. And Dr. Nomarothal, you may have something to add.
Yes, I just want to say this is a really important question, because many people, when they hear meditation, they think it's sort of one size fits all. And there are many different forms of meditation. Some, like TM, use a mantra, where people are taught specially how to think the mantra. Others are called open monitoring meditation, like mindfulness, where people track their breath or their internal processes. Others have an object that people are asked to focus on and bring their attention back to. These are all things that ask different things from the meditator, and they have different effects on the brain waves, the EEGs. They're all actually different processes. The important thing about that is that if you have one form of meditation that is shown to do something very powerful or very good, you cannot assume that it's also going to apply to other forms of meditation. And that's just how it is, for example, with medications. You've got a medication that works for a certain condition. Even if another medication seems similar or seems good, that medication, that drug company is going to have to test that medication for that indication. So I'd say, practically speaking, everything you've heard today has been done with Transcendental Meditation. Maybe others would also be helpful, but they have to prove that and demonstrate it on their own.
We take one more question before we take a short break and invite people to then remain for some more comments from our veterans and military leaders. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Tonya Sargent. I'm a proud Marine Corps wife. 7 years ago, my husband took a bullet in the right eye that exited through the left side of the head. And so we're 7 years in the residual of trauma. And my grandson was just born yesterday at 1 a.m. And so I'm looking forward. I'm a good friend of Tara Weiss and Jerry Yellin, and I'm looking forward to having this be a part of the process for my family to begin healing in order to not infect this third generation. So my ask is twofold. One, I'm running for Congress in 2014, so I see this as going to be a great addition to being in that stressful environment. But for those of you on the stage that have a family, I'm not infected by the front line. I'm stressed and suffer from PTS from the civilian factor, which I refer to as the silly villains. But I don't get the support on this end, and I'm traumatized from the residual of the initial trauma. So my question again is, for those of you on the stage that have a family, how is this a positive ripple effect from a self-centered situation?
Doing TM meditation has been such a joy. I'm a better thinker. I'm a better mother. I'm able to have so much more energy. I get more done than what I used to get done. So, it's just an amazing experience, and you have to experience it for yourself. And to follow up from Armando's question about the homeless and the veteran population as a whole, for the types of discharges that are considered other than favorable, instead of our society giving money to all these different places for veterans, they really need to take some focus and support the David Lynch Foundation and TM. I don't do anything but just meditate, and I do that by myself, and I'm not doing that with any money. And I'm telling you as a person that I had 4 lapses of consciousness in the last year. And I have, I'm not a person that's reluctant to use the different types of services that's available for the veteran population. I've always a faithful supporter of the Department of Veterans Affairs, but I needed something else. I was walking around like a zombie. I have a son. I cannot function like that. It was too much. So, what the David Lynch Foundation is doing is transforming history for the veteran population. It's just that simple.
You know, I belong to the elite service-disabled veteran-owned businesses of America. And California, you mentioned you are going to be running for office. Well, you got our vote. One of the things is California is one of the most veteran-friendly states in the country. You can change America by starting right here in LA. You have already Congressman Filner, who's a wonderful, wonderful man. So it could start here. That's it.
You asked about how the families are affected. And everybody knows when someone's miserable and they're suffering and they have torment and anger and all this behavior, it affects them, it poisons them, but it poisons everybody around them. When that person gets happy, and when that stress starts lifting away and they get their life back again, it affects all the family. They're so happy too. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And for those veterans who may not be covered, if they write a letter, a good letter to the David Lynch Foundation, chances are they'll get the technique they're looking for. And the whole thing about the foundation is to give Transcendental Meditation to any student anywhere in the world who wants it. And we translate that to any human being anywhere in the world who wants it, if we get enough money.
On that wonderful note, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back in about 2-3 minutes, and we have some incredible things, I think, to hear. So if you can stay, please do stay and join us. Thank you very, very much for being with us this morning. It's a wonderful pleasure for me to introduce one of my favorite human beings, and that is Dan Burks. Dan. And he has a master's degree in educational psychology. He's had a career in outdoor adventure sports and is a retired professor of the Department of Exercise and Sport Science at Maharishi University of Management. He and Cindy have been married for 41 years and have 2 children. Dan is a captain retired from the U.S. Army Reserve. Before I let Dan speak, however, I really would like to play a few minutes from an incredible interview he did that opened my eyes in a big way to the depth of the issue at hand here with post-traumatic stress. So if we could just watch that, and then I'd like to invite Dan to share his reflections. Thank you.
December 18th, 1967, Newsweek. Yeah, 5 days after my birthday. This is a story called The Day's Work. And this is my unit. We went out and got ambushed. And this is me. Yeah, doing my job. We were attacked at this place called Buda. That fight went on for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The first night, I killed 14 people. There were 2,500 of them and 250 of us. The next morning, in front of my fighting position, 18 of our men did. So this is very, very, very distressing, and it creates huge amounts of distress in your system, And then later in the magazine, coincidentally, is this. This is an article about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and a couple guys in my platoon. One of them got the magazine, and he came running over. He said, "Burks, you got to read this." So I did. And I said, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that." Because it talks about stress release, about becoming a whole person. So then the next part of the story is getting home. And that's a whole big deal, because things changed. Things changed. All of a sudden, you're in a different culture. All these people don't understand you. They have no idea. They don't realize that you're always still in the rubber plantation of the jungle. You're always on an adrenaline high. You're looking to protect your buddies. You're looking to protect yourself. You're looking to kill the enemy. I stopped talking to my parents. I had really bad relationships with other people. I did not feel happiness. I did not feel sorrow. I did not feel surprise. My feelings were gone. So one day, my wife comes home and says, "Hey, I saw a poster about Transcendental Meditation." And I remembered that article in that magazine about Maharishi, and that I said I was going to do this. So I go in, and he says, "Okay, sit down, do this." And I could not believe what happened. It was the difference between heaven and hell. It was absolutely transformational. All that feeling of stress and all that feeling of heaviness, I could feel it melt away from my head to my feet. And from that moment on, things changed. Things changed. No more drugs, no more alcohol. Life changed. My emotions came back. My life came back. "44 years ago today, I was getting on a Chinook helicopter with my platoon for a battalion mission. We had 25 KIA out of that battalion. A month later, my company of 120 had lost an entire platoon, 30 guys KIA. A year of continuous and frequent combat leaves a mark on a guy's brain. Now, PTS is sometimes referred to as a hidden wound of war. It's hidden deep inside, the wound's hidden deep inside your head. But the manifestation, the effects of that wound are seen on the outside. And when I got home, as I said in the video, I was angry, I was sad, I was paranoid, I was always on the alert. I got wounded with shrapnel in Vietnam, but that didn't hold a candle to the wound of PTSD. Not a bit. Not a bit. And then, as the lady over here asked a question about families, there's what's currently called collateral damage. My wife suffered. My family suffered. Only my dad, who's a World War II veteran, understood, and he couldn't talk about it. Then we learned TM. Cindy and I learned TM. And things changed. And practicing TM over a short period of time, twice a day, just days and months, it turned Cindy and I into PTS survivors. And we didn't just survive, we thrived. We really did thrive. And as Cindy says, we're not the memory of the chaos and the suffering that was around us. We're now barely touched by that chaos and suffering. And something else really cool happened. As a few days after meditating, weeks, not even weeks, days, our parents, our friends, our relatives, college professors noticed that my life was no longer controlled by post-traumatic stress. As a result, my father, a Baptist minister, my mother, Cindy's parents, relatives, our entire extended family, and college professors started TM because they saw the immediate results. That's the answer to your question about, about how it affects your family. It really does. So what happened was that those people that learned, our family and friends, all had the same results that we did, the same energizing and calming effects that we did. They were empowered from within. Now, I am an infantryman at 65 years old. I'm a retired infantry officer. I'll always be an infantryman. And I have memories that are going to be with me all my life. But here's the key. PTS is no longer with me. And it's because of TM. Now, I found out about TM just by luck. Just by luck. When Specialist Heron gave me that Newsweek magazine. He didn't get a chance to meditate. He was later KIA. Now, our veterans today don't have to rely on luck, on chance to find out about TM. Thanks to the David Lynch Foundation, TM is available to any veteran who and their families who want to start. And the David Lynch Foundation is partnering with other veterans organizations dedicated to restoring the health of all of our warriors. Now, my experience with Transcendental Meditation is that it allowed me to take charge of my life. It allowed me to take charge of my life. And with the regular practice of Transcendental Meditation, you servicemen and veterans, this is an old Army saying, but you can become all you can be. And guess what? You're going to become more than you ever thought you could be. So, there's no screwing around. Don't waste time. Take the initiative, take charge. Get a hold of the David Lynch Foundation, and you will change your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. That's incredible. Sometimes people hear about PTS for the first time and they say, well, that's psychological, isn't it? And like any wound, it's physical, it's physiological. In a situation of traumatic stress and overwhelming fear, the fear center, the amygdala, goes into hyperdrive and can get stuck, basically, in overdrive. And when the fear center is overactive, everything in our environment is perceived through a veil of fear. And that hypervigilance and constant stress is just with you, unless you can shut it off. And what comes with the overdrive and the amygdala also, to different degrees, is shutting down the prefrontal cortex, the executive center. And the prefrontal cortex is our rational filter against primitive, impulsive, aggressive, violent behavior. Under stress, it shuts down. That's the fight or flight response. But under chronic stress or traumatic stress, it can shut down chronically. Now, the rest we get during a night's sleep can settle things down, or in some cases, it won't. And what we saw in this incredible video, in Dan's case, and in many cases, one dose of extremely deep rest can quell that hyperactivity. Not always. It could take days or weeks of regular practice or months of regular practice. But the only way to quiet that fear center is to basically settle it down. And that's what, according to research, the TM technique can do. So I'm going to introduce somebody who knows a lot about this, and that's Colonel Dr. Brian Reese. He's a graduate of the U.S. Army War College with over 35 years of commissioned service. It's a long time. And a veteran of 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He received his MD in Master of Public Health from Tulane University and is a board-certified family physician. His latest article on the application of Transcendental Meditation and other modalities to promote soldier resilience was just published in this November issue of Military Medicine. Colonel Dr. Brian Reese.
Well, I don't know what I'll be able to add to what's already been said, but that won't stop me. I have 4 minutes, and I know I'm supposed to cut it short, so I'm going to get rid of all the verbs, but you're going to get it. So I'm talking about resilience in 4 minutes. Now, the Army recognizes the need for resilience. It defines it as the ability to bounce back from challenging experiences. And as Dr. John mentioned, the article that I wrote, I screened thousands of articles and reviewed, actually read a bunch of them. And then looked at 33 different meditative techniques, looked at the data over the domains of soldier resilience, and assuming that there are direct relationships between better health, lower blood pressure, freedom from anxiety and stress, better workplace interrelationships, family relationships, and so forth. Looking at all those, I concluded that TM is a very suitable intervention to propose for soldiers before they get broken by combat. There is no test, there's no x-ray that you can do to measure resilience yet, but I think the surrogate markers that we've looked at with all the data that's out there are appropriate. Now, it makes sense that stress management could prepare soldiers, might make them more resilient. But I really don't think it has much to do with relaxation. You know, if you think about the origins of TM, these yogis and seers living in caves in the north of India many thousands of years ago, stress management, relaxation, are probably not very high on their list of concerns. So it's just an epiphenomenon that we can study, but something else is going on, and I'll come to that. There's an axiom: the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war. And the Army's very good about training soldiers, making them tough, having the focus on getting the mission accomplished. But really, can our current training, the things that we do, help a soldier to deal with the situation of seeing a friend killed, or hearing the screams of one of their comrades who's just had a leg blown off or is caught in a vehicle that's burning, or the experience of pulling the trigger and seeing the enemy soldier fall, or even worse, pulling the trigger and finding out that the vehicle that you thought was full of bad guys was full of a bunch of women and children and a lousy driver who really didn't know he was running up on your checkpoint. And these sorts of experiences, I think, are so contrary to the way we're raised, the way we understand the way the universe is supposed to work, that it creates a lesion, an injury to the spirit. And that is really where I think the lesion of PTSD lies. The Army, the U.S. Army says that, so it must be true, that among the dimensions of soldier resilience, there are 5 dimensions, and one of them is spiritual fitness. And this is current policy and current training in the Army. But how do we go about making someone spiritually strong? And here's the quote that the spiritual dimension is not defined in religious terms, but rather is strengthening a set of beliefs, principles, or values that sustain a person beyond family, institutional, and societal sources of strength. It's a very appropriate definition. But how do we go about training someone to be spiritually strong, to be able to withstand these pressures and these conflicts that come from combat? We train people for 20 years, it's wrong to steal and kill and all that, and then we send them over there and we blow stuff up and kill people. So, and then they come back, and I think if we were to look at the subset of soldiers suffering from PTSD who have completed suicides, I think we would find that guilt, and this hasn't been studied that I don't know of, but I think that is where the action is. Guilt about surviving, guilt about killing the enemy, guilt about killing civilians on the battlefield. And on the one hand, you've got someone who believes, I'm a good person, I deserve to live, I deserve to be loved, I'm good. And on the other hand, look what I did. Look what happened over there. And when that tension can't be reconciled, then I think someone might take his life. So since I'm approaching retirement, I can pretty much say what I want. And I think this is the particular value of TM, of Transcendental Meditation. And that is the identification of the individual mind with universality. It enables that style of functioning where the mind settles down to its least excited state, which is beyond thought. It's calm, it's unified, it's without boundaries, and it's without these tensions and opposites. And in my opinion, I think the key to soldier resilience is going to be the experience and the culturing and the establishment of that state and style of functioning of the mind and body in soldiers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. That was very, very compelling and very profound, very powerful. At this point, we're going to invite Dr. Serena Grosswald back, who shared some very moving remarks, very compelling remarks earlier today on the special importance of Operation Warrior Wellness for women veterans. And if you could share a few more thoughts, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to elaborate a little bit on some of the things that I mentioned earlier this morning. First of all, again, just recognizing the fact that putting some attention on the women and women veterans who, as we said, have been under-acknowledged and underserved. And this new initiative with Operation Warrior Wellness, very exciting. We hope to really make a difference for these women and begin to raise awareness for something that really has not gotten a lot of attention. A big issue for these women is trying to prove themselves in the military. They have to prove both to themselves that they can exist in a world that's predominantly a man's world, and also be able to prove to others that they are getting over it. They have to combat the notion that women are weaker, that they can't do what men can do, and consequently they have to sublimate what are their natural qualities of femininity, their natural qualities of nurturing. These are qualities that then when they come home, they are back into their family life, their friends' life. There was the question that was asked of the press about how does this affect the family. The family, whether it's a man who's serving or a woman who's serving, the effect is they try to transition back as someone else has taken on a lead role in the family while they were gone. If they have children, 40% of women who are serving in the military have children. When they return, they're children who have not seen them in however long a period of time, or that they've been deployed and back and deployed and back. And these children have not been able to have that constant connection with a parent, with their mother, with that nurturing aspect that only a mother can play. And so for the child, for the woman who's returned, for the other family members there, that transition is very difficult. And the woman has to then get back in touch with those qualities. And Tara can talk a little bit about that. She explained to me recently just the aspect of getting ready for an event tomorrow night and being able to get back in touch with getting a dress, with wearing heels. These are challenges that are very unique to women. And then the other aspect, as I mentioned earlier, military sexual trauma. Something we've not heard a lot about. Women who have been in the military, this is a long underground issue. A recent study by the Veterans Administration showed that of the women who were coming to the VA, 55% of those women report that they were sexually harassed. 23%, almost a quarter of them, report that they were sexually assaulted. So this is a trauma that they're living with, that there's not a lot of attention on, and there's not a lot of services yet to provide to these women. So part of what we want to do is be able to fill that gap, to give them something that's personal and private. And again, the question was mentioned earlier about those who don't want to come forward about their traumas. It's a very strong issue for men with PTS, very strong issue with women who have suffered MST. The aspect that Transcendental Meditation is perfect, personal, and private, something that they can learn that's a resource to them, that they don't have to say what the trauma is if they don't want to. I also wanted to mention that someone had asked me, one of the press, what exactly is Transcendental Meditation? What is that experience? And you've heard them talk about their experiences and how it's changed their life, but I just want to mention very briefly what it is. And it's a natural technique that doesn't involve controlling the mind or trying to force the mind to do anything. It's a very simple, natural technique that allows the mind to experience thought at quieter and quieter and quieter states until eventually they lose even the boundaries of that thought to experience their own consciousness without that conscious thought. And the effects on the mind and body are profound. And that also what we see is that women who have suffered trauma, whichever type of trauma it is, they have greater likelihood of significant other mental disorders later. And the fact that this technique, the ability to reduce those stresses, also reduces the likelihood of all of these other disorders. So again, Operation Warrior Wellness, with this new initiative, particularly on women, we pledge to be part of the solution for these women and to help fill that gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to introduce Supriya Vinick, who spent 6 years serving in the U.S. Army, 4 of them as a sergeant. She had numerous diverse and challenging missions as part of the Signal Corps that took her overseas to Iraq, Kuwait, and South Korea, as well as many locations stateside. Currently, she's a student at Maharishi University of Management and will be graduating in May with a degree in media and communications. And she's going to share her personal experience with military and TM. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Supriya Vinick, and up until last year, I was a sergeant in the United States Army, and I spent 15 months serving in Operation Iraqi Freedom on behalf of the United States Embassy. Today, I'm a student at Maharishi University of Management in Fairfield, Iowa, where the practice of TM is a part of my daily routine in consciousness-based education. While in the Army, I was very blessed to have amazing mentors who guided me, and I have formed deep friendships with my comrades who have become my brothers and sisters. As undeniably impactful as the military was for me, it also forced me to face the truths about the complex fabric of military life. As a woman, I have and had special needs that were not always recognized. While in Iraq, for weeks on end, a single hour would not pass without being bombed by mortars and rockets. This level of combat stress affected my physiology to the point of changing my reproductive system. Besides my own personal experiences, as a leader, I saw many issues affect female soldiers that I led and served alongside with, like how to be a mother while overseas, and also upon returning back home. And on more than one occasion, I had to deal with issues of sexual harassment and sexual assault of other female soldiers. We're trained as women in the military to see no difference between ourselves and our male counterparts. But the truth is, it's a very complex process to balance being a woman with being a soldier. I also saw the issues of PTSD affect many soldiers, including the ones that I was in charge of. These issues became detrimental to the unit's operation and to the mission of the United States Army. It wasn't always easy to connect with soldiers who were so severely affected by stress. It wasn't until I learned TM and saw my own humanity and compassion unfold that I realized how stress affected me and how TM could help others who are affected by stress at all levels. Being involved with the David Lynch Foundation, I have witnessed transformations of many individuals, and this gives me hope for the future of our country. By finding this profound tool of TM, I was able to change the direction of my life dramatically, and I am confident that the same will happen to other veterans. From the very beginning of my meditation practice, my anxiety and stress began to lessen, and this affected every aspect of my life. For the first time in 6 years, I was able to sleep a full night, and I experienced a healing of my mind and my body. I began to connect with people in a more authentic way, and I felt more powerful and coherent as a leader. I am aware that this subject is very uncomfortable for many, but I recognize how TM has affected me, and I see the value and potential for healing that can be had for other soldiers who are faced with similar issues. I strongly believe the practice of TM will change how issues in the military are handled and will enhance the individual soldier, male or female. If one soldier is suffering, then we are all suffering. If just one soldier practices this technique, then we'll be increasing coherence and the efficiency and effectiveness of an entire unit.
Thank you. Beautiful. A little earlier, we had the opportunity to hear the incredible interview with David, George, and Julia. And at this point, I'd like to take a few minutes to invite David back to reflect a little bit on his experience in the military and the use of TM. Thanks.
Thank you. I've spent like 10 hours writing this, but I'm not a good reader, so I'll just freestyle. off the top of my head. This is such a severe issue, this PTS, and I've been meditating for several years now, 2 years, 7 months, and a couple days, and 3 to be exact. And I'm removed from it enough to when I see myself after a year and 2 months, I really felt happy. I remember that video and making it, and I remember smiling. And then I see it. I've only seen it 5 times because I don't like seeing my mom like that. I remember it wasn't a good time. But now, like, I smile, and I know I'm smiling, and I see myself smiling in videos and pictures, whatever. And then the video after a year and 2 months, I felt it, but I couldn't really show it. And I think I'm showing it. I think I look all right. I'm smiling. Yeah. Okay. So it's the merging of the two, of this, infantrymen forever, infantrymen forever. We have this mentality. When you're hurt in the military, you do 2 things. You drink water and drive on, or you drink water, take Motrin, and drive on. Like, that's what you do. That's just the way that you fix everything, or you drink alcohol. And with doing TM, you're not taking anything as much as you are giving yourself the opportunity to reflect, like, inward, and really get to know yourself more so you can bring that out. And like I'm doing right now, unifying that with a message that I have that is real. And before I started doing TM, when I was in that hole of the PTSD, it was drab. I couldn't show it. I felt it, but it was still overwhelming me to the point where the things I wanted to say and how I wanted to say them wouldn't come out exactly how I wanted it, whereas now it's a little different. So the experiences, I think about the great things. Like lately, now that I have this ability to reflect on my life and look forward to things and really just get in touch with myself. It was the war and it was learning TM. Those are the last 2 things, in the last 5 years. Those are things that stand out. When I'm old, I'm going to be like, war, TM, I wouldn't trade my experience in the war, even though it wasn't the best. It could have been better, nicer, I don't know. I wouldn't trade it for anything except for that $1 million check. But there's nothing I would trade TM for. That's something that I'm going to stay doing that I really feel has affected me. And because of how it's helped me be more the way I want to be, it's allowing me to speak and really try to convey the message that TM helps. And the David Lynch Foundation, is trying to help push that as well. So I'm going to do as much as I can. And TM has really helped me answer the questions, like, what would you do? You ever see, the stuff in the movie? What would you do in that situation? I went to war, and I found myself in those situations, and I was like, whoa, I'm not acting the way I thought I was, because I'm scared. And then, TM, after learning that, have you ever seen TV? It's like, oh, a person's up there talking to people. What would I do in that situation? And I can answer that, and that's as much as I can. I have the ability to, and the sense that I can do as much as I can with whatever it is that I put my mind to. And right now, trying to get other veterans that are suffering or families that are just having to deal with the issues that they do. I don't know. I'm the soldier. I'm not the family. But if I can help, I don't know, spread the word, and then I'll do it as best as I can. And TM has allowed me to really come in here, reach in my soul, show embarrassing videos of me, my mom and I, but it's helped me be able to go inside and try to grab something real and share it with anybody that's willing to listen. And y'all are here as a good support, so thank you. And my name is David George.
Thank you, David. Next speaker is a hero of ours, and that's Ed Shlomit, who we saw briefly before. He is a retired Chief Master Sergeant from the New York Air National Guard and a Vietnam Marine disabled veteran serving from 1960 to 1966. He is currently president of Fidelis Service Group, a certified service-disabled veteran-owned business. Ed has been married for 48 years to Judith Ann and has 3 children, Catherine Sislow, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Shlomit Jr., with the USAF, and NYPD Lieutenant Robert Shlomit. Ed.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I have to say this, of course my boys hate this, but I always said that I always wanted to be a pilot, so I had a son. I always wanted to be a cop, so I had another son. Or I should say my wife and I had a child. But I always wanted to be smart, so I had a daughter. All right, but now we'll get a little serious on a very delicate subject. It's the war and sacrifice in post 9/11 and a cry for help. America's post 9/11 wars are very unique. Never before has this nation engaged in conflicts for so long with such a small amount of our population fighting this fight. In an address to West Point in 2011, Admiral Mullen, then the Joint Chief of Staff, made a comment. He said, "I fear they do not know us." Admiral Mullen was referring to the nation's civilians. "I fear they do not comprehend the full weight of the burden we carry or the price we pay when we return from battle." We Marines are a boastful lot. Hurrah. A Marine friend told me once that President Obama in 2009 made a comment, and he said, "Freedom is not free, but the United States Marine Corps will pay most of your share." However, there is one word in that statement that is not emphasized enough. The word is most. We will pay most of your share. That means there is still room for the rest of us to contribute. We are here in LA to ask for that assistance. We shall be in New York City in April of 2012, requesting the same from them. In LA and in New York, and between these two great cities, is that 1% who has pledged their lives to protect us. That 1% is our military. In 2007, a private sector security agent was making $1,222 a day, whereas an Army sergeant was making $190 a day. Recently, you have seen in the media people using the slogan of 1% versus the 99%. Supposedly, 99% want what that 1% has. The way I use this percentile is, we, the 99%, owe that 1% what we have today. Operation Warrior Wellness is talking about a different 1%. We are talking about our newest, greatest generation. We want them to know that we are there for them. We are here to let them know that your anxiety, your depression, your sleeplessness, your substance abuse, your family disruptions, and other symptoms of post-traumatic stress can be addressed by a proven medical treatment that heals the mind. We want to offer you a warrior's mindset, and it is offered through Transcendental Meditation, or TM. 2011 is a bittersweet year for Operation Warrior Wellness. It was a year we heard of terrible statistics regarding our veterans. I won't repeat all of them, but a few need to stand out. July 2011 was a record number of suicides for the Army, 32. 160 suicides by mid-2011. 13% of the veterans are unemployed today. Now comes the good news. Numerous veterans have successfully learned TM, as you heard today. We established strategic alliances with many major veteran groups, such as the Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans of America, the Wounded Warrior Project, Norwich Military Academy, and the U.S. Army, to name just a few. David Lynch today pledged $1 million to assist our 1%. The Department of Veterans Affairs is looking for proposals today for TM for veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs and all military branches are giving their all to support those who are suffering from post-traumatic stress. And you got to hear about how a World War II P-51 fighter pilot picked up a Vietnam Marine veteran on Iwo Jima in 2010, and with the help of Bobby Roth, David Lynch and his team started Operation Warrior Wellness. PTS is not an American problem. It is a global one that needs to be addressed by our world leaders. Thank you. Operation Warrior Wellness is available to partner with any other nation. We have a global cure for a global problem. In closing, we are asking corporate America you 99% that are out there, and our government leadership to provide the necessary support through donations to establish public law to help veterans with employment and to offer financial assistance to Operation Warrior Wellness. And if by chance this press release happens to find its way into the hands of Mrs. Obama and Mrs. Biden, we would like to sit down with you two and discuss how we are changing the lives of our military and their families one mind at a time. So, in closure, let's be there for them who are there for us. God bless America and Semper Fi.
Thanks, Ed, for all you're doing for veterans and for Operation Warrior Wellness. We have a few remarks from Tara, who we heard a little bit from earlier today, which is absolutely delightful. We'll be hearing more about that, and then a couple of closing remarks. Thank you.
You know, I always like to, it's always so much fun to come amongst my military counterparts because we start getting this tug of war over our different branches of service. But what I will tell you today is there's 1.8 million women that served in the U.S. military. Veteran women existing in our nation, my sisters. Women are chemically made up different than men. During boot camp, military women give up a part of their femininity for the overall acceptance into what has historically been considered a male-dominated culture. Women are nurturing, motherly, and emotionally connected to nature. We sacrifice a part of our femininity to conform to the distinctive image as a soldier. After service, part of our transition is finding our path back to womanhood. Women veterans matter. Thank you.
Well, I've been asked just to make a few closing remarks, and I will keep them very brief. Firstly, all the speakers have been extremely eloquent, and there's very little that I can add to what everybody has already said. The audience has been extremely patient, and we don't want to try that patience too far. So I will just say, as a psychiatrist, I have been listening with fascination to the fact that we have here veterans of 3 different wars: World War II, Vietnam, Iraq, different ages, and yet TM has helped them all transform their lives. We have women and we have men, so apparently gender is no barrier to the power of TM. We've heard about military sexual trauma, and we've heard about combat-related trauma. So apparently, the kind of trauma, the cause of trauma, the origin of trauma is no barrier to the efficacy of TM. So as a psychiatrist, I sit back and I think, wow, what is this process that crosses all these barriers, that is available to people in so many different stations of life? We have here a truly wonderful, miraculous entity, and the more people who find out about it, gain access to it, and are able to get the healing effects of it, the better. In the break, somebody came up to me and said, what about a mom who's just overwhelmed by her kids and just every day feels like a trauma? So, you know, I don't want to diminish from anybody else's trauma, but trauma is a very broad word, and this is a truly miraculous technique. In thinking about where we stand in connection with transcendental meditation and post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm going to borrow from and modify a quote by the late, great Sir Winston Churchill, who appropriately made it to comment on the stage of the war that he then saw himself as being at. I will apply it to where we are in relation to TM for PTSD and specifically combat-related PTSD. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but perhaps, with the help of this $1 million generous grant, it is the end of the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you all so very kindly for coming, and those who are connected from afar, thank you for tuning in. Please give generously. Thank you.